Superman has been flying across our screens for decades, but something went seriously wrong along the way. Hollywood nearly destroyed the Man of Steel, turning him from a beloved cultural icon into a brooding, misunderstood symbol that audiences struggled to connect with. I've dug into every Superman film, looked at box office numbers, and pieced together what really happened behind the scenes to understand this incredible journey from icon to outcast and back again. Before Superman ever appeared on movie screens, he was born in the pages of Action Comics #1 in June 1938. The original Superman was pretty different from the one we know today. He couldn't fly, he could only leap tall buildings in a single bound. No heat vision, no freeze breath, just super strength and invulnerability. And Clark Kent worked for the Daily Star, not the planet. What really made Superman resonate with audiences was the timing. He showed up at the end of the Depression and just before World War II, a time when Americans felt pretty powerless against huge economic and global forces. Here was a character who could take down corrupt businessmen, stop wars, and protect everyday people. He was the ultimate power fantasy for a disempowered public. Superman's Jewish roots are hard to miss. He was created by two Jewish teens, Jerry Siegel and artist Joe Shuster, during a time when anti-Semitism was rampant both in America and Europe. Superman is literally an immigrant who changes his name to fit in while hiding his true identity. It's a metaphor that struck a chord in a nation of immigrants. The character was an instant hit, selling out his first appearance and quickly getting his own comic. Within just a few years, Superman was showing up in newspaper strips, radio shows, animated shorts, and eventually the 1950s TV series with George Reeves. By the time Richard Donner brought him to the big screen in 1978, Superman had already been a cultural icon for 4 decades. A lot of people think that peak Superman happened in 1978, with Richard Donner's Superman the movie. This wasn't just a good superhero movie, it was a cultural phenomenon that dropped at just the right moment. America was still reeling from Watergate and Vietnam, and people desperately needed a hero they could trust. Donner's approach was groundbreaking for one simple reason. He took Superman seriously. He called it verisimilitude, making the impossible feel real. While other directors might have leaned into camp, like the Batman TV series, Donner didn't wink at the audience or treat the material as silly. He got that for Superman to work, you had to believe in him. Or, as the movie's tagline put it, you'll believe a man can fly. The special effects team had to come up with new techniques to make Superman fly convincingly. That famous tagline wasn't just marketing. It was a real technical challenge. They developed a front projection system called Zoptic Process specifically for the film. This attention to detail stretched to every department, from production design to John Williams' iconic score. Casting Christopher Reeve was genius. This relatively unknown stage actor didn't just look the part, he became Superman. Just watch how he physically transforms between Clark Kent and Superman. His posture changes, his voice deepens, and he carries himself with total confidence. It's so convincing that you genuinely believe glasses could be an effective disguise. The numbers speak for themselves. Superman the movie pulled in $300 million worldwide at the box office. That's nearly $1.5 billion today. Critics raved about it, calling it a pure delight and the most expensive comic strip ever made, and totally worth it. Superman 2 kept this success going despite major behind-the-scenes drama. Donner was fired after shooting about 75% of the sequel after disagreements with the movie's producers, and Richard Lester was brought in to finish it. Even with all the drama behind the scenes, the film still did well at the box office, but this production chaos was a hint of what was coming. The Superman franchise crashed faster than a kryptonite meteor. Superman 3, 1983, and Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, 1987, are textbook examples of how to destroy a great character. Superman 3 ditched everything that made the first 2 films great. Instead of epic storytelling with real emotion, we got Richard Pryor as a computer whiz and Robert Vaughn as a run-of-the-mill villain. The film aimed for comedy, but forgot to include any actual jokes. focusing more on the sort of bad slapstick that Lester had already forced into his cut of Superman 2. Critics slammed it, audiences turned away, and the franchise was in big trouble. But the real disaster was Superman 4. With the rights sold to the infamous Canon Films, the production was so badly managed that they cut the budget from $40 million to just $17 million while filming. The special effects looked like they were done by high schoolers with a camcorder. There's a scene where Superman rebuilds the Great Wall of China with his eyes, a new power of building stuff that he never had before, and it honestly looks like it was animated in PowerPoint. I'm not exaggerating, it's that bad. The film bombed spectacularly, earning just $30 million worldwide. Critics were brutal. One reviewer said it was more powerful than a locomotive in sending audiences to sleep. After this mess, Superman vanished from theaters for almost 20 years. So what happened? Basically, the studio just stopped caring. After Donner left, the producers saw Superman as just a way to make money, instead of a character to protect. They cut budgets, rushed things out, and focused more on selling merch than on telling a good story. Christopher Reeve later said he wished he hadn't made the third and fourth films, admitting they had totally lost their way. In 2006, Bryan Singer tried to bring Superman back with Superman Returns. His plan? Just ignore the mess that was Superman 3 and 4 and make a direct sequel to the classic Donner films. He even picked Brandon Routh because he looked a bit like Christopher Reeve. On paper, this nostalgic approach made sense. Singer had just come off the successful X-Men movies, and Hollywood was getting back into superhero films. But Superman Returns totally missed the mark. It paid so much tribute to Donner that it forgot to tell its own story. Superman spends more time chasing after Lois Lane than actually doing Superman things. The action scenes are pretty scarce, and the plot about a real estate scheme feels way too small for a guy who should be saving the world. Which, given that Superman the movie was really just about a real estate scheme, though one that killed Lois Lane, spoilers, tells you just how much better Richard Donner's was in that first movie. The biggest flop was the premise. Superman comes back to Earth after 5 years and finds out Lois has moved on, had a kid, and won a Pulitzer for an article called "Why the World Doesn't Need Superman." This puts our hero in a pretty bad spot. Instead of inspiring hope, he's just trying to win back his ex. Then there's the twist that Lois's son is actually Superman's child. This brings up all sorts of awkward questions. Did Superman sleep with Lois and then ditch her without realizing she was pregnant? The film doesn't really tackle these issues, leaving audiences scratching their heads about whether they should be rooting for this version of Superman at all. It's not a terrible movie, critics were generally positive, and it still has a 73% Rotten Tomatoes score. Many found the film slow, gloomy, and lacking in action. One viewer summed it up perfectly. I came to see Superman, not Superman's therapy session. But the real issue was the box office. It was one of the most expensive movies ever made at the time, with a massive $204 million budget. Its $391 million worldwide gross was seen as a letdown. Warner Brothers was hoping to hit at least $500 million, especially after seeing how well other superhero films like Spider-Man had done. After factoring in marketing costs, the movie barely broke even, and plans for a sequel were dropped. The lesson was clear. Nostalgia alone couldn't save Superman. The character needed to evolve for a new generation. But how do you update a character whose whole appeal is his old-fashioned values? Enter Zack Snyder, a director known for his visual style and knack for rethinking classic movies. Back in 2013, his Man of Steel totally redefined Superman for a post-9/11 world. This wasn't your classic Superman. This was a conflicted alien struggling to find his place in a world that feared him. Snyder's style was bold and controversial right from the start. He stripped away the bright colors and optimism of past versions, going for a more muted look and diving into heavy themes about power and responsibility. Henry Cavill's Superman wasn't just super strong, he was carrying a ton of emotional baggage. The way the film was structured was also pretty groundbreaking. Instead of the usual Superman origin story, Snyder showed Clark Kent's childhood through non-linear flashbacks. We see him save his classmates from a bus crash, only to hear his adoptive dad say he maybe should have let them die to keep his secret safe. That's a big twist on the typical Pa Kent, who usually stands for clear moral guidance. The epic showdown with General Zod stirred up a lot of discussions. Superman, who normally doesn't kill, ends up snapping Zod's neck to save innocent lives. This moment really sums up Snyder's take, putting Superman in tough spots where he has to make impossible choices in a morally gray world. Some fans thought it betrayed the character's core values, while others liked the realistic consequences he faced. Man of Steel did pretty well at the box office, raking in $670 million worldwide. But critics were split, and today it has a 57% Rotten Tomatoes score. Audiences were more positive, giving it a 75% score, showing that many fans were ready for a deeper look at Superman. Snyder stuck to his guns with Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, 2016. The film was dark, like really dark. Superman became a controversial figure, facing congressional hearings and public debates. The movie straight up asks, should one person have that much power? What happens when good intentions lead to unintended consequences? Critics absolutely savaged it, giving it a brutal 28% Rotten Tomatoes score. They described it as joyless, convoluted, and grim in review after review. But once again, audiences were more forgiving. The film made $874 million worldwide, a solid number, but not what Warner Brothers hoped for with Batman and Superman, and their new Wonder Woman in the mix. The drama peaked with Justice League 2017, when Snyder stepped away from the project due to a family tragedy. Warner Brothers brought in Joss Whedon to complete the film. The outcome was a tonal mess that left everyone unsatisfied. The theatrical cut only got 40% on Rotten Tomatoes and didn't do well at the box office. Then something wild happened. Fans launched a massive campaign, #ReleaseTheSnyderCut. After years of pressure, the studio finally gave in, and Zack Snyder's Justice League hit HBO Max in 2021. The 4-hour version scored a much better 71% from critics and an impressive 93 to 96% from audiences. This proved Snyder's supporters right, but also showed just how divisive his style had become. His Superman was super interesting, but he felt a bit distant, more alien than human, more God than man. By 2025, both Superman and the whole DC film universe were at a bit of a crossroads. After years of mixed results and different ideas, Warner Brothers brought in James Gunn and Peter Safran as co-CEOs of DC Studios. Their goal? To create a cohesive, successful cinematic universe that could actually compete with Marvel. Gunn's first big project as director was Superman 2025, a complete reboot starring David Cornsweet as the Man of Steel and Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane. Right from the start, Gunn made it clear that his Superman wouldn't just be a repeat of Donner's idealism or a continuation of Snyder's darker take. The production went surprisingly smoothly compared to past Superman films. Gunn had the freedom to bring his vision to life without studio interference. This wasn't just luck, it was a smart move by Warner Brothers to learn from their past mistakes. They finally realized that micromanaging creative choices leads to inconsistent films. Gunn really nailed it by finding a perfect balance between tradition and innovation. His Superman is optimistic without being naive, powerful without being over the top, and moral without being preachy. The film acknowledged the complexity of today's issues while still insisting that goodness matters. Unlike Snyder's version, which often felt disconnected from humanity, Gunn's Superman is all about community. He has friends, colleagues, and people he genuinely cares about. This Superman smiles, jokes around, and truly enjoys helping others. The visuals were just as balanced. While Donner's Superman had bright primary colors and Snyder's was all about gritty, desaturated tones, Gunn's film used a rich, vibrant palette borrowed from Silver Age comics that felt both modern and timeless. The action scenes were spectacular but didn't overshadow the character moments that gave the story its emotional depth. Critics and audiences loved it. The film scored an impressive 85 to 86% from critics on Rotten Tomatoes and an incredible 95 to 96% audience score, the highest in the franchise's history. It pulled in over $615 million worldwide, making it the top-grossing superhero movie of 2025, even with tough competition. So what happened to Superman over the years? How did Hollywood almost lose one of its biggest characters? The first mistake was forgetting what makes Superman unique. After Donner left, filmmakers either didn't get the character or were scared to take risks. The second mistake was overcompensating. Singer's Superman Returns was all about nostalgia, while Snyder's films were too focused on deconstruction. One was looking back, and the other tore everything down without fully rebuilding. Neither found the right mix of respecting tradition while moving forward. It's possible that, given where we left Superman at the end of the Snyder Cut of Justice League, Superman would have evolved into a more hopeful version in Man of Steel 2. But we never got to see that. The third mistake was studio interference. Warner Brothers kept panicking and changing plans midway. They rushed Batman v Superman to compete with Marvel and then changed Justice League to make it lighter. These knee-jerk reactions created tonal whiplash that confused audiences. What Gunn nailed was understanding that Superman needs to grow without losing who he is. His Superman deals with modern issues but responds with timeless values. He's powerful yet vulnerable, alien yet human, exceptional yet relatable. Most importantly, he inspires hope, something both Donner and Gunn got. Superman's journey isn't just about one character or franchise, it's really about how we see heroism. Each era's Superman shows what we want from our heroes at that moment in time. Donner's Superman came out when America needed a boost in faith after Watergate and Vietnam. His clear-cut goodness was a fantasy of incorruptible authority in an era of corruption. Singer's Superman popped up during the early War on Terror, when America was feeling nostalgic for simpler days. His nostalgic approach reflected a desire to get back to a time before 9/11. Snyder's Superman came out when there were big debates about surveillance and growing skepticism about American influence around the world. His complicated hero raised the question of whether we can really trust someone with that much power. Gunn's Superman shows up in a time of extreme division, when finding common ground feels impossible. His upbeat but realistic take suggests that values like compassion and integrity can still bring us together, even with our differences. The takeaway is that Superman sticks around not because he's the strongest, but because he can change with the times. Each generation reinvents him to tackle their own fears and hopes. When filmmakers get this, like Donner and Gunn did, Superman shines. When they miss the mark, he struggles. If you want to find out if Marvel can rise back up the way DC has with James Gunn's Superman, I wrote another video asking if Avengers Doomsday can save Marvel. Watch this video here.